So it's really interesting to me and how few people understand academia and how people just really do not get it. And I kind of wanted to talk about that today. So if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Mastak, an Associate Professor of Innovation, Strategy, and Entrepreneurship. And I created this whole Reciprocity Project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I wanted to pay the favor for it to help you out. I often see, especially being on social media and stuff like that, I realize that, there is a ton of people that that are in academia that, feel frustrated and, they feel down. All those kind of things that, we deal with because they're pushing and pushing and pushing like all the time. And on the opposite side is that anybody that is not in academia, they think they do nothing. And they think that they are sitting there not accomplishing anything, and it's just like this cushy job where they get all these summers off, and all they do is they teach a few classes and wander through. They have like absolutely no clue on like how ridiculously tough it actually is. And the funny thing is that these exact same people, they they do a little bit of education and then they quit because it's too hard. And then they have this sort of logic of like, oh, well, then it's like super cushy after. I'm like, buddy, you quit because it was so hard. And then you're going to assume that this is going to just carry forward. And it's just going to get like easy for you. Like, this makes no sense, right? Like, that makes no sense. It only gets harder, and it's ridiculously tough to do these things. And like understanding that the whole process, everything with academia is just an absolute battle. It's an absolute competitive battle, competitive ground. And I know some people are like, oh, what is he talking about? It's because you're not publishing in the same journals and you're not sort of trying within the same groups. That there's real differences if you start reaching to, higher level journals, or, you publish in a certain cohort, a certain literature, that it is really tough, right, to get, because there's bloody smart people out there. And, trust me, it's like, I'm not the only one that sort of experienced this. There's so many doctoral students, there's, so many professors and stuff that are in this where they're trying really hard, but, they get beat up in the process. And, that's the funny thing, because I kind of thought when I first started graduate school I'd be able to publish all this kind of stuff and everything, and then you start doing it, and then you get about 2 years in of graduate school of doing my PhD, where I was like, oh crap, this is really hard. I was still at about 2 years in, I was still like pretty confident with it. It wasn't until it was about 4 years in that it was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really hard. And there's a lot of struggling that you have to do to get something in. And it's not only, so here's the other thing, it's not only the struggle, right? It's not only pushing and doing all those things, but there's two other elements that are there. There's a significant portion of luck. That is definitely part of it, where you do get, lucky streaks with editors and, the reviewers that you have, where you get the right reviewers, the right editors, and everything sort of clicks, and it goes through, like, your stuff that you're working on goes on pretty quickly, and you're able to accomplish a lot because, that all clicks. And then the other thing is that if you're with the right groups, publishing groups or writing groups, you're with the write co-authors, all of those kind of things. So it's just perfect. And things that go really, really quickly. And it's not as bad, but it's still a tremendous struggle with it, right? We have to realize that there is just this endless push. And then, on top of it, that is that's the next thing, right? So the day of that you get something accepted, or you get another R&R, for example, man, that day you're thinking about, okay, what's the next thing? We got to work on the next thing. We got to work on the next thing. And it's never ending, right? It never, ever, ever stops with that. And you accomplish a ridiculous amount by doing that. So, that is that's kind of the crux of academia, is that sort of that behavior where it's constant, you got to keep going, but at the same time, it's also kind of the beauty of it, right? That's what makes it so, that's what makes science so, that sort of makes science progress pretty rapidly because of it. But, it definitely is something that is funny, when you see this. And as part of what the whole Reciprocity Project is to let other people know that, hey, look there's this crazy person on the internet, and hopefully I'm telling you that you're okay, and that you feel good, and that you're not alone, and all those kind of things. But also to really inform people that, the outside world, both those who want to get into academia, of this is really, this is gonna be tough. And then, of the other people that are just kind of that are just almost belligerent in the fact of sort of not seeing this, that it's a journey, and it's a journey. And so to have some respect with it, right? So it's to have respect to anybody that's trying to accomplish anything, right? Just at the end of the day is sort of thinking about this. Okay, so entrepreneurs, right? You might look at entrepreneurs and only sort of respect, an Elon Musk or somebody like that because they're successful, but you're completely overlooking all of the mom and pops, small businesses that are in the daily grind, and they're working at it, and they're working at it, and they're working at it. There's so much, right, that you have to realize that goes on, and that people are really trying with these things, and just having some respect with, the greater, just with more people, and having sort of more empathy to see where they're coming from. I think it's super important, but it's very challenging, because the culture has demonized academics, and this has gone on for, so long, right? That's absolutely the culture of. I was reading about the science of science yesterday. So looking at it was a history paper talking about when Pasteur, back in the 1800s, when he was making his discoveries, and it was going in with all the same stuff that's going on right now, back in the 1800s, of just everything. I don't want to go there in terms of that there is an enormous amount of pushback, where it is this grind, and it's part of. So the reason, so this is this is what goes on, and it's the reason that there is this pushback is there is a lot of uncertainty that's involved, and when there's uncertainty that's involved, people tend to have, so uncertainty being you don't know what the information is, you don't know what the right answer is. There's a lot of research on this, in many different areas, but people go They either do sort of fight or flight response sort of thing, where they get angry or they hide, they don't know what to do, sort of that behavioral response that goes on. But also people start developing myths, and they start developing rituals to deal with this uncertainty, and this is kind of natural human behavior to do these things. And we sort of develop institutions that are really based on a lot of myths and things like that. So, and that propagates throughout society, and that's how we sort of deal with this uncertainty when there is a change of like, our world doesn't look this way. Somebody is saying, like, they're basically a heretic, right? Like, somebody is saying that the world doesn't look like this, and you have to, as the heretic, you have to be that one weirdo in the corner that's dancing away by yourself, and you have to change everybody else, and convince everybody else that your story actually makes sense. And that just takes a lot of time, and a lot of gumption, but also a lot of like emotional strength, because you're not only sort of changing a small group of scholars, but that sort of propagates out into other people. And a lot of people are just really doubtful, and they really, that they have so much surety in them that this is the way that the world exists, that they don't want to see anything else, right? 99% of the people out there are going to be not open to sort of seeing the world differently. And I don't know, I pulled that number out by hand. But there's this thing, a huge portion of people that just don't want to see the world differently, and they're uncomfortable with this uncertainty. In fact, different cultures are more or less uncomfortable with uncertainty depending on what countries you're from. Like, there's a whole lot of research on this kind of stuff. We as scientists, as researchers, we have to sort of lead the charge on ideas. And our ideas are not always right, which sort of complicates things tremendously, because then people use those insights against you. But that's part of the scientific method. It's that, we're constantly trying to find stuff that's a little better, perhaps. I don't know if we can never absolutely know. The only thing that we can really do is falsify some things. We can we can stop. We can sort of say, hey, this evidence is not great, and we have to. That's the only thing that we can do is to sort of rule out evidence. But it's hard to rule things out, really. Anyway, it's a complicated story. But my where I'm going with is that people are very just uncomfortable with these things, and they don't really get it. But you just got to simply keep going and have confidence in yourself. Be a good person when you're doing it. Sympathetic or empathetic, I guess, with how they're feeling. And, just keep taking those steps forward and being brave when you're doing that, and realizing that even though that you don't understand some field or something, know that it is a heck of a lot more complicated than you probably think it is, and that there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. If it seems really strange and unusual and people are not doing things, there's probably a reason behind it, and you have to understand what it is all about. So with that, have a good one, take care, and see you on the next pod.